Welcome everyone, this is Tim Pullman and you're listening to the SEP Couch. This podcast is all about standard essential patents. We talk about patent strategies, friend licensing, patent pooling, and patent litigation. So let's dive into today's episode. She is a leader. She is a negotiator and probably one of the busiest SEP licensing executives in our industry. I'm super happy to have here today with me Laurie Fitzgerald, the Senior Vice President of Avanci. Hello, Laurie.
Hello, Tim. How are you today? Thank you for that very kind introduction.
Oh, no, I think everything I said is very true. And I think many people who follow the news on SEP licensing did see you a lot on pictures, on panels. I think that was a very busy time lately, and I would love to learn more. But before we do that, I think one thing I always do at the very beginning, I want to know more about the person. Who is Laurie Fitzgerald? And of course, since you are today sitting at my SEP couch, the virtual couch, of course, how did you get into that topic? Who bothered you with that first time? So I would love to hear more about you and your career.
Well, my name is Laurie Fitzgerald. I live with my family and work for Avanci in Dublin, Ireland. As far as how I got involved in SEPs, well, I wish I could say that it was the result of a lifelong interest in patents and standardization, but that is not how I ended up here. I'd say I'm a curious person. I've always loved science and technology, and that led me to earn an undergraduate degree in chemistry. But chemistry was ultimately, I think, just too black and white for me. I like different perspectives. I like tackling problems that don't have a clear answer. Maybe you could say I'm more of a shades of gray person. So when I was 21 years old and trying to figure out what to do with my brand new chemistry degree, I was at dinner and a friend's father asked me if I had ever heard of a job called IP lawyer. I had not, but a lawyer friend of his was looking for law students who had a science background to intern at his law firm. And the rest is history. I went to law school. I did intern with that lawyer friend. I spent a year clerking for a US district court judge, and then I went to work as a trial lawyer. But it was still, I'd say, another 5 years or so before I ran into SCPs. A colleague of mine was going on maternity leave, and she walked into my office and asked me if I would take over her role in a case involving something called standard essential patents. And the client happened to be Ericsson. And the next week I was in Stockholm learning what friend licensing was for the very first time. I spent the next decade, it turned out, working almost exclusively on resolving disputes involving SCPs in forums all around the world. And although some were surprised when I departed the law firm in a world with plenty of SCP litigation, I was growing more and more interested at that point in resolving licensing disputes without litigation. And in 2018, I had the opportunity to work with my current colleagues. And as they say, timing is everything. And it was the perfect time for me to leave the law firm. And at first I worked for one of Avanci's sister companies called Teletree. And I spent 2 years there learning the business of SEP licensing. And then I moved into my current role around 3 years ago. And every day I get to work with incredibly innovative companies from all around the world. So it really works with, my kind of lifelong interest in technology. And these are companies who are really leading the development of the cellular standards on one hand and the future of mobility on the other. And it was a roundabout way to arrive here, but I think it suits me well. And I'm, getting to work with that diversity of views or all those shades of gray in a very constructive way.
A great journey, Laurie. And indeed, I would argue the same way in our industry. There is too often no clear answer, and you have to be really a diplomat to make things work. You are now SVP at Avanci, and Avanci calls himself a platform some other people would say it's a pool, but you say that it's a platform. Can you give us some insights? What is Avanci all about? Why is it maybe different than other patent pools or traditional patent pools that we've seen in the past? And give us some insights.
Yeah, well, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what Avanci is, to start with, we are an independent global intermediary, and we provide joint licensing solutions for standard essential patents. Avanci was created back in 2016 with a vision of transforming how technology is shared and really simplifying the licensing process to benefit consumers as well as inventors on both sides of the licensing equation. We discussed how you spoke with my colleague, Luke McElroy, about some of this on your podcast a year or two ago. But definitely things have moved on at Avanci since then. Today, we're offering joint licensing programs for a variety of technical standards, including those used in vehicles, automotive aftermarket products, IoT devices, consumer electronics. An Avanci license is straightforward, it's predictable, it's a fair option for licensing the patented technologies that get incorporated into a lot of products and services. So talking about the platform itself, I guess my personal, it's the way I like to talk to people about this is, creating these licensing programs is not easy. It really requires listening to views of a wide variety of players, each with different needs to determine a set of licensing terms that can be and in fact are widely accepted by licensors and licensees. And this is, we traditionally have called ourselves a platform rather than a pool to, emphasize the point that we talk with and we actively listen to a large number of companies and institutions from all around the world, both licensors and licensees, over months and maybe even years. And we're working hard to be creative, flexible, persuasive. I think three key words that I often use to describe Avanci and our approach are independent, optional, and compromise. I think this is the platform and how we're different maybe from some historical or traditional patent pools that are, maybe created by patent owners rather than an independent organization. And when I say we're independent, I mean we're not, owned or controlled by any licensors or licensees. The terms of our license are not, they're not created or dictated by any member of Avanci. Rather, we arrive at the terms of our offered license by, working closely with many stakeholders, striving to understand, out of all of the many views that we hear, where do we find the middle ground? What is the set of licensing terms that in our independent judgment can and will be widely accepted by companies around the world? And we have that inherent interest in finding that right balance. Second, I said we're optional. And by that, I mean that we're only ever a licensing option. Licensors and licensees can choose to negotiate and enter into individual licenses just as if there was no Avanci before they decide to work with us, during the time they're participating, and in any time in the future. It's always an option for patent owners and also for the licensees. And it's a business decision for companies, whether or not an Avanci license is the best option for them, and no one is ever forced to engage with us. And lastly, I said that we're a compromise. And by that, I mean when, on the SEP holder side, when they join and decide to participate in Avanci, they agree to license their SEPs on a standard form license. It's necessarily a simplified agreement with terms and conditions that probably do not match their typical licensing practices. And in exchange for that compromise, each licensor receives a royalty from Avanci. In our vehicles case, or program, in that case, it's each time a licensee sells a vehicle, and it may be less than the royalty that the patent owner would receive outside of Avanci. But in return for that compromise, the patent owner does not have to engage in those lengthy discussions with many automakers around the world. And on the automaker side, they're also making a big compromise when they join Avanci. They're agreeing to a form license covering, the portfolios of dozens of patent owners. They get long-term predictability on costs, and they eliminate their risk under thousands of SEPs with one signature. But they may also be agreeing to license on a set of terms that is not what they would want in a bilateral or individual agreement. But the value of the license does grow over time as more and more SEP holders join the platform. And the automaker, although it has forgone its opportunity to negotiate individual licenses on customized terms, it does get the long-term certainty and predictability that our license can offer. And so my role is in all of this is I lead the vehicle business, and including our licensing programs for 4G and 5G connected cars. And you said earlier, you talked about me, but I'll use this moment just to say I work with an incredible team of talented people and really fantastic partners around the world. And if it was not for the trust and support of the licensors and licensees who participate in the platform, we would not be where we are today.
That's good to hear. I mean, I'm sure it has been, quite some work to talk to all these different players from both sides of the table. Was that in fact, it was exactly 2 years ago when I talked to Luke. And back then he said, he's hoping to come up with a 5G vehicle program the next year, but it took a little bit longer. But then I have to say, when I saw the press release, it was an impressive list of licensors. And I think people keep forgetting that the likes of InterDigital and Qualcomm, before joining your 4G program, never joined a program ever in history. These are strong licensors that have their own in-house license teams. They have very strong positions on how they put contracts in place, and now you have to find common ground, right? Across a lot of licensors also. So that is really impressive, I have to say, Laurie. Still, of course, maybe you can share with the audience a little bit what is up next, because I keep hearing from people, oh great, Avanci is out now, everything is solved. But of course, you solved the one side of the table, the licensors are committed. But now you have to get in the licensees, and you came out with the first logo at launch, and that was Mercedes. Now BMW followed just a month later, which is nice. I think BMW was your first with the 4G program. But what can we expect now? Are the logos now dropping in? Do you have any goals? You also put some pressure here with a deadline. Can you give us some insights here on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, it's true. I'll say when you talked to Luke 2 years ago, I think if you had talked to me 2 years ago, I would have also told you I was working on the 5G program, and we really had thought that it would launch sooner, but our aim was always to offer automakers a license to the vast majority of 5G and 4G SEPs from the very first day, and to do this at the very early stages of 5G rollout and connected cars. And that took time. Like you said, when we have as of today, we have 61 licensors participating in the 5G program. In the 4G program, we announced it in 2016 with 5 licensors. And when BMW joined as the first licensee, I think there were 11 licensors in the program. And then it was 16 months before the second licensee signed. And today, 7 years in, we have 57 licensors. And yes, more than 80 automakers, our automotive brands are under the license, but 7 years to 57 patent owners. In 5G, we started with or at least today, 1 month in, we have 61. So, you know, that's, I think, what took time, is really being able to launch with the critical mass, and also with the licensee. So I feel like we succeeded in that aim. And we also, in hindsight, we did succeed in getting the program launched at the early stage of the rollout of 5G and connected vehicles. You know, there are some 5G vehicles out on the roads, but I think by and large, it's the very early days, and a lot of automakers have not yet sold their first 5G vehicle. So I'm happy that we're able to offer the license to them and let them know what the Avanci terms and conditions are before they sell those cars. You know, as far as, you know, what comes next, you know, you said, you know, do we have a timeline? I mean, we would love to see every automaker who is planning on selling a 5G vehicle become an Avanci licensee soon, and certainly within the early adopter period, when they can secure a reduced royalty rate. You know, this early adopter incentive was an idea that came from some members of the auto industry who we talked to over the last couple of years, and they gave us excellent input on the 5G program, and it was great to be able to incorporate their idea into our launch. You know, this early adopter rate, by the way, is available to automakers who become a participant in our 5G program the later of either when they sell the first 5G vehicle, or February 16th, 2024. So, you know, there's some time for them to reach out, or for us to have a discussion with them. But signing a license now ensures comprehensive coverage under 61 and growing portfolios. And anyone else who signs in the future as a licensor. And it includes not only SEPs owned by those 61 and growing licensors today, but also SEPs that may be acquired by them or granted to them in the future. I think Tech Insights, who's done some independent research for us about 5G vehicles, wrote in their white paper that already 25 automakers have announced that they have plans to sell 5G vehicles. So we know this is widely on the horizon, and we hope that automakers reach out to us without delay. If they're not selling a 5G vehicle yet, they can still take the license, and it's easy. If you're not selling the vehicles, there's really no burden. There's nothing to pay.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's only fair that if companies take that step, that, they at some point get a competitive advantage to those who rather wait and see, right? And then obviously if you do sell your cars, you also prepay, right? You also have to think about that. So I think that's in general a fair system. And I think it's also common in more traditional patent pools that there are incentives for early adopters. And I think that should be the case, because in pools, it's always a chicken and egg problem, right? I mean, you don't want to be the first among your competitors to pay something because you have higher costs. And then, those are the typical dynamics, me as an economist, I could see, right? That make things difficult. But obviously, there are also sometimes critical voices on this. Typically early joiners of Avanci have been auto brands that sell high-priced cars. And for them, $29 may be different than to, lower-priced cars. What do you answer to those voices that basically argue cheaper cars should get a lower rate? As we sometimes also see in the handset manufacturer world, why is it different with Avanci? Why do you keep that rate simple, lump sum, everyone pays the same?
Yeah, well, you're right that we often see, or we have seen the premium brands be the first to adopt the Avanci solution. It was true in 4G and it has, so far in 5G. But, we often see that premium brands are the first to roll out new technologies. And so that naturally means that those brands will be the first to think about licensing patents, that cover those technologies. But I think what we saw in 4G and what I'm optimistic we'll see in 5G is that the rest of the industry will follow as the technologies are adopted there as well. As for the question of why we have the same price for everyone, I mean, this is really a key feature of Avanci. I'd say maybe our main feature is that we offer the pricing. It's transparent. It's on our website. And the price on our website is the price that is offered to all potential licensees, regardless of their size or their location, or whether they're a premium brand or a volume brand. The value of the technology that we're licensing doesn't vary with the cost of the vehicle that incorporates it. And when an automaker takes an Avanci license, they get the assurance that we're offering the exact same price and standard form agreement to all of their competitors. And the point is to create a level playing field, no matter where you're selling vehicles around the world. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're always an option, and we're designed to bring efficiency and predictability to the process. And our published rates are part of that efficiency and simplicity. We do have differentiated rates based on the generations of technology that are covered by our programs. We have a $3 per vehicle pricing where the technology is only used for e-calls, so emergency calling. 2 and 3G connected vehicles are that's a $9 per vehicle pricing. 4G, which includes 3G and 2G, that's $20 per vehicle. And then, as you said, our new 5G program, it includes 4G, 3G, and 2G and CV2X. That pricing currently for early adopters is $29 per vehicle. So we do differentiate between the programs, but within the program, licensees get that assurance that the offer we make to them is the offer we make to everyone else at that time. But again, if an automaker believes they can get different terms from the licensors by licensing directly, they're always free to do that. It's completely optional.
Well understood. I think if you look at the 4G program, it was just, you could kind of observe that premium brands go first and the others come later. However, one market, of course, is yet not there. I mean, you have, I think, every major brand of the world in the auto space, and now with Huawei joining, also all the major SEP holders. So that's great. That's really almost a one-stop. But one, of course, territory, stands out, which is China. And I know from Chinese handset manufacturers, at least, that they keep arguing, well, China is a different market. Here we also pay lawyers SEP royalties for the handsets. Also for the vehicles, that must be different. And I guess as long as they sell in China and the jurisdiction is kind of like a black box to kind of, outside of Avanci, obviously your members would have to do that, enforce patents, but I haven't seen that yet, at least. But I went to Germany a few weeks back. There is this big auto show, right? And there were a lot of Chinese companies there with their, smart electrical vehicles, and everyone in Germany is now very scared. But that made me thinking, guys, if you come now to Germany, and I'm sure they come to the US as well, and you sell your cars and get a market share here, I think that's when you will have to pay royalties on SEPs at some point. What is your take on this? Why is China so challenging? And do you see that those Chinese brands will be part of Avanci soon?
Again, we're only an option for licensors and licensees. So, I can never say whether or not a particular SEP holder or automaker is going to choose to license their patents through Avanci or their vehicles through Avanci. We have licensors, as you noted, from all around the world. The patents we license are essential to cellular standards, which are ubiquitous worldwide. the automakers who currently participate as licensees are making and selling vehicles all around the world. You know, it's really important to us that our license is a global solution, that we're connecting automakers and patent owners on a level playing field, regardless of where they're operating. You're right that, there is, the Chinese market is one market where we have a lot of participation on the SEP holder side. Huawei, ZTE, China Mobile, Oppo, many others are participating in Avanci, but we so far do not have participation on the auto OEM side. And we're certainly would be delighted for those OEMs to join the platform. It wouldn't be fair for me to speculate on why they have not done so. It's not something I've discussed with them, but we're hopeful that they will, I think, come to the conclusion that it is simple and efficient and a good option for them, just like I think it has been for automakers in other places. We're certainly open to talk with any OEM, no matter where they're based, and we're hoping that maybe when you talk to me again 2 years from now, we'll have seen greater uptake of our solution in China as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be, and let's put that in the calendars 2 years from now. Another Avanci interview here on my SEP couch. I think that evolution has to be monitored closely. And another voice that I keep hearing, and of course, as you know, at IPlytics, we work with a lot of SEP licensors, but also the other side of the table. And I think most of the automakers are they really agree that the most efficient way is licensing through Avanci. Even there is the option, but why would they go bilateral, right? And the SEP owners would just offer the exact share of what they ask in Avanci. You just have to pay more lawyers to go through contracts. So I think that is well understood, accepted even as a structure of how licensing should take place. The only one issue is always the price, obviously. And we had a pretty good panel earlier this year at the LESI annual meeting with Mercedes being on the panel. Your colleague Ika was there. We had Fabian Gonell from Qualcomm, and we had also Alan Fan from Huawei. So all those who now launched together. So they were all super.
In the audience.
They were all super positive. And I was like, wow, why is this even an issue? You all agree. And I guess Klaus Mansberger from Mercedes, he agreed it's the most efficient way, but we have to discuss the price. So price is always at the essence, obviously. No one wants to pay for something. And I keep hearing at least some voices, right? A lot of positive voices, but some keep saying, well, you started with $15 and now you doubled that price. And that is, not fair. 5G is not that much better. And how do you answer to those people that feel like, the prices have gone, or it's a stretch at least what you're asking now compared to at the beginning of the 4G program?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll say, I actually have not had a conversation with anyone who has said, we don't think there should be any royalty paid, the price should be zero. I mean, I think that
Good start.
when automakers and start giving us input and talking with Avanci, I think no one has I don't think anyone is that extreme. Really, when we are collecting feedback, like I've been doing over the past couple of years, we're hearing everyone's thoughts. This is, we think that the appropriate price should be X, and then you hear from someone else it should be Y. And from, we've talked to people across the spectrum, and we really had a wide range of views. But at some point over the past few years, it really did start to converge. We've been really successful in attracting licensors to the 4G program. And maybe you have to go back to the history of where we started. I mean, more so than many people expected. And in July of 2022, we had 49 licensors participating in the program, and we were still offering the same $15 per vehicle pricing that had been offered when BMW joined the program, when we had around a dozen licensors. And the prices stayed the same for all those years. And really, to ensure that the program could continue to attract additional licensors and flourish for all of the participants, we announced a new 4G vehicle price of $20 for new licensees who signed licenses from September 1st of last year forward. And there was, to be clear, there was no increase in the price for licensees who joined the 4G program before that date. Part of an Avanci license is when you sign a license, a 4G license, that $15 price would stay the same for the term. And since we announced that price increase, the 4G program has flourished. We've welcomed 8 new licensors, including Huawei and Samsung. That added value for existing and future licensees. And I will encourage you to watch for new licensors who join going forward. I think we'll continue to see additional 4G licensors in the near future. And then we closed out 2022 with more than 80 brands under license. And so I think that in 4G, we were successful in finding that balance. But, at some point, the program had grown to deliver much more value to a licensee than what had originally been contemplated back at the start, because of the size, the sort of the scope of the patents, and also I think the value being delivered by the licensed patents, had grown over time. And so, when it comes to 5G, we're at $20 in 4G, and we announced a 5G price for early licensees of $29, and that $29 is the product of years of discussion with potential participants. The 5G license covers not just the 5G standard essential patents of the 61 licensors, but also any 4G, 3G, 2G patents that they own. And with each generation of technology, we see new use cases for cellular connectivity in connected products. And with the auto industry, we're seeing new use cases that add additional value for drivers, passengers, other road users, the automakers themselves. And I think it's very reasonable to expect that the price of the Avanci license would reflect that additional value. So I think it's a combination of a broader license, including, many more patents within the license, and then, plus additional value delivered by the licensed technology. And then, of course, we kind of as you saw in 4G, we're also looking to price the license in a way that will continue to attract licensors and continue to deliver more and more value for licensees. Our mission is to find the terms, and it's certainly not limited to price, that can be widely accepted. And so, as I said, I think we did that in 4G, and, stay tuned. I think we're on our way to kind of proving that we've done that again in 5G.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, Laurie. And I think people have to also realize the dynamics here we have at play. I remember at that panel I mentioned earlier, Fabian Gunnell from Qualcomm said, if I knew that so many licensors would join, I would never agree to the $15. I would agree to a higher price only. And that you also have to think about early joiners of your program never kind of knew who they have to share the royalties with, right? I mean, as you said, BMW joined when they were 11. Now you have almost 50. I can even give you some numbers from IPlytics here. If you count declared patent families, back then when BMW joined, you had about 30% of the declared patent families that were granted at the time. And today you have beyond 80. Some of our analysis even show 85%. So it's more than double the number of patents compared to back then, right? And if you think about Qualcomm's share back then among the 11, of course, that decreased a lot now, sharing it with so many other major SEP holders that joined, and their piece of the cake got smaller, right? And I think those dynamics people have to realize for the SEP holders, they never really were able to really predict how successful you would be. And with that success, how much royalty they can expect, right? So I think from that perspective, right, it is a long way, and it's very dynamic.
I mean, this is the compromise that I talked about earlier. When you are a patent owner and you join Avanci, perhaps one of the only things that is certain is that your share of the royalty will decrease. There's only one way it's going to go. It's down, because even if your portfolio grows and you know, there's probably the most certain thing is that other licensors will join. And the difference between 11 licensors and today's 57 sharing that $15, it's very different. And but you know, we've been, I think because we've been successful in drawing in and you know, participating licensees, we have found that kind of middle ground where we have wide participation, even though the patent owners have, you know, seen their shares diluted over time. I mean, like you said, it's the cake. I mean, maybe your piece of the cake gets smaller, but the cake gets bigger.
Right.
But I mean, there is a bit of a, you know, there has to be the balance, because if you are imbalanced either way, then, you know, you won't have the program succeed. So
Yep.
you can't price too high, but you also, you know, you can't price too low. There has to be that middle ground.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I talk to some of the automakers, one fear, and that has always been in the industry, most of the litigation, patent litigation in the automotive space is with patent assertion entities, right? And many fear them because they can be, you know, it can be quite demanding and difficult to handle. And I think also one achievement is that you not only got the big ones, you also got a lot of the small ones in. But one more maybe technical question here, because I hear that a lot from licensees. What are the dynamics when patents are sold or acquired? If like a major SEP licensor now sells their portfolio to a small patent assertion entity that plans on aggressively enforcing them, I haven't joined yet, or I have joined yet. What are in the two scenarios? What can I expect?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's a question that I get a lot from potential licensees who are considering an Avanci license. You know, the way that I describe it is the Avanci license is a sticky one. And by that, I mean that any SEPs that are held by an Avanci licensor at the time an automaker takes the license are covered for the term, even if they are sold or, you know, outside of the platform to another company. And so the license sticks to those patents as they're transferred to a third party. But that stickiness occurs after the automaker takes the license.
Right.
And so if you've already taken an Avanci license, you know, let's say you're selling 5G cars. So you've already taken a 5G license, and then an Avanci licensor sells patents to another company outside of the platform. Those patents are still licensed to you. So the acquirer would not, you know, you would have a license defense and they can't be enforced against you. And, you know, this is one reason why I think an automaker, even if they haven't sold the 5G car yet, or they're not selling them yet, they could still take the license today and benefit from that stickiness. But if an automaker puts off taking a license, and the Avanci licensor has already sold those SEPs outside of Avanci, then they wouldn't be covered by the divested patents unless the acquirer is part of the platform, you
Right.
know, and with 61 licensors, we do see patent transfers, you know, that are within one licensor to another. And
Sure.
that, you know, that's one of the reasons why we work hard to have every SCP owner. I mean, our goal is always 100%. And then these transfers are inconsequential for a licensee. But, if you're an automaker and you're concerned about this potential risk, I mean, your answer is simple. Just sign up to an Avanci license as soon as you can.
Right.
Then you benefit from that sticky license going forward.
Because if that is a company outside of Avanci, it doesn't become a member automatically. It's just a stickiness, right? So I can
Yeah.
still get asserted when I'm not a member and join late by patents that have been acquired meanwhile. So that's a good point. I think that is also something that makes the OEMs sleep well at night, because once they sign up, there's nothing they have to worry about. At least those patents owned currently by all members are secure. So they only have to look at outsiders, which there are not many with active license programs. Also, that's something to mention, right?
Yeah, I think, if you look at our 4G program over time, I think we've been really successful in growing that program, to where active licensors, I mean, licensors who are going out and in having a licensing program, whether they're NPEs or operating companies, I think by and large, not everyone, but by and large, they have joined the program. And I think 5G from the start, where we've got that situation already. We're always, like I said, always trying to get 100%. That's a big goal, and nothing's perfect.
Right.
But I think we really have managed to reduce the risk dramatically for an Avanci licensee, that they will be in a position where they're thinking about or having to think about licensing patents outside of their Avanci license.
Yeah. No, I think I can confirm that. I think we published that study on the outsiders even, and there are really not many left. I mean, most of them are typical implementers that use their patent for defensive purposes, for cross licensing. Maybe patent pooling or patent platforms are not their daily business, so they didn't join, but for other reasons. So I think that is definitely something very, very a situation, I would say, that is very comfortable for the auto industry. Great, Laurie, this has been a great conversation here. Lots of insights about the new program. I think we're all going to be stay tuned. Who's joining next? I think you are in a great journey here. And, at some point, also hope to see some Chinese brands on your website. I think that's something I'm excited to also observe and see. What I always ask anyone here at my SEP couch at the very end is a statement, your final words of what you want our audience to keep remembering from Laurie Fitzgerald.
Yeah. I will leave the audience with this. The SCP space is exciting. It's really interesting. So for anyone out there who's listening and considering patent licensing as a career path, I encourage you to jump right in.
Great. Thank you so much, Laurie. This was a great conversation, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks, everyone, for listening in to the SEP Couch.